Hi there, and welcome to the Nottingham College podcast. I'm Dan Morris.
And I'm Ollie Adams.
And in this episode, we'll be looking at universities in Nottingham and finding out whether or not they're worth going to, since it goes without saying that there are a lot of different factors of attending a university, especially ones that often go overlooked, that can really have an impact on a student's overall experience. Along with our college group, Ollie and I have spent the past couple of weeks researching and finding out the kinds of issues that university students commonly face.
Yeah, and we believe we've narrowed them down to the ones we think are the most prevalent. And first, we'll be covering financial problems that these universities, along with their students, are currently facing.
Yeah. So, for starters, in the 2025 National Student Money Survey, students were asked if they were considering dropping out of university due to any of the three reasons that were given, which were money struggles, student loan repayments, and the interest rates of those loans. The most common answer was money struggles at 31%, whereas loan repayments clocked in at 16%, and loan interest rates were the least common answer, sitting at 12%. Maintenance loans, which are basically funds from the government for students to help cover bills and food and stuff like that, increased by 2.5% over the course of 2024 and 2025. Now, you'd assume that since there was an increase in the amount given to students, that means there must be way less students that are still struggling now, right?
Yeah, you would definitely think that, but here's the thing. Going off of that same survey, the average student living costs were £1,142 per month, but the average maintenance loan for students was around £640 per month, leaving £502 of uncovered costs per student on average. So it's quite easy to see how difficult getting by must be for students today, and it's really quite unsurprising that so many of them end up having to quit their education because of it.
Exactly, yeah. Especially considering that, a majority of students already struggle with money already. And going off of that, for some people, university is likely off the table completely, even if they wanted to attend, maybe due to their family income being too low to cover costs, for example. Like, for people barely scraping by as it is, the fact that their maintenance loan each month would barely even cover half of their necessary spending makes things way too difficult for them. On a side note, it's one thing to look at a survey, but it's another thing to actually get information from the source. So something else that we did was carry out vox pops with both students and members of the public about their views on university. So let's talk about some of the opinions they gave us. One of the people we interviewed was a creative writing student, and he was generally satisfied with this course and didn't mention having issues with it.
No, he didn't, but something he did mention was that there are probably better options for other than university for people that might not be suited to his course. Another person we ended up talking to, though, was planning to go to university, but said that a lot of her friends were looking at alternative options such as apprenticeships.
Yeah, and the main reason behind that was because they were worried about the debts that came with university, but she also said that another reason was that they preferred more physical or hands-on jobs. So I guess that sometimes it instead really boils down to what sort of career field interests you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I'd say that transport could be another problem, though. That's one other university student talked about in one of our vox pops, since she said that it needs to be cheaper, although it's accessible. And to be honest, even though she might find it easy to get to and from university, there might be people who rely on alternate methods of transport that find it more challenging. It's certainly an issue, but I'd say it's one of the less impactful ones, all things considered.
Yeah, you've definitely got a point. I'd say the most important issue that needs to be dealt with is just student finance as a whole, since it has so many more problems that branch off it and pop up as a result. It's probably one of, if not the biggest factor regarding whether or not someone would actually decide to go to university.
Yeah, exactly. I know I just mentioned about career fields being an important influence on someone's decision, but ultimately, regardless of the course you pick, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And you'll likely end up having to pay those fees back for a pretty long period of your life, and that's not even counting whatever loans you might have had to take out because of the support you were given might not have been enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's just such a huge problem, and it definitely stops people who'd want to go to university otherwise.
Yeah, with all of these problems stemming from this one thing alone, it almost feels like regardless of your circumstances, you'll be impacted negatively by university in some way. I'd say there's something many people forget about, actually, is the needs of students with disabilities. And speaking of which, we have a guest on today's episode who works as part of the Disability Support Services at the University of Nottingham. Now, unfortunately, she was unable to come into the studio to join us today, but I was able to speak to her one-on-one recently to ask her some questions for today's episode about her role and find out how students with disabilities and more complex needs are supported. So we'll play that interview now so you can have a listen for yourself. Okay, so I'm here with Eleanor Payne, who is a Disability Support Services Administrator at the University of Nottingham. So first of all, can you give me a brief overview of what your job involves?
Sure. So me and the other administrators are the front line for the disability team. So we get the queries from students and from applicants about what kind of support we can offer. We set up the initial support plans and we direct more complicated questions to our team of disability advisors and the specialist tutors who work with students with dyslexia and ADHD and specific learning differences. So in a nutshell, that's what my job involves.
Cool. Yeah, so what are some of the issues that you often see students with disabilities having, would you say?
I think for a lot of them it's transitioning from school or sixth form or college to university. It's a big step for a lot of them. You know, they're coming away from their home and their family, so dealing with that change and that move to a more independent life can be particularly challenging for people with disabilities or additional needs. Sometimes problems with time management, balancing the coursework demands, prepping for exams, but making friends as well. I think some people can find their experience of disability to be quite isolating, and we can facilitate the social side of things as well as the academic.
Yeah. So is it often challenging for your team to handle these issues, would you say?
It varies. Sometimes all students want is the extra time they had for their GCSEs, their A-levels, and they're fine. So we literally just set it up and we never see them. Some students we see quite regularly who have more complicated issues, flare-ups of long-term medical conditions, and I think sometimes it can be difficult to convey to academic staff just how challenging that impact can be. Sometimes it's hard for people to appreciate how those challenges can really impact university level work.
Yeah, and then going off of that, would you say that the university is taking enough action to deal with these issues and support these students?
I certainly think we do our best to do that. Sometimes I think our messaging could be better in terms of making clear to students what we can do, but also where there are limitations. Sometimes, you know, a student who does one course might have an adjustment that can't be accommodated in another course because, say, for example, they're doing medicine and there are professional requirements that they have to be able to demonstrate. So we can't necessarily make an adjustment where that wouldn't allow the student to show that they were meeting the demands of that course. And I think it can be difficult to get that message out.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's time constraints as well. You know, people can come at us at last minute and expect us to fix things when they've got themselves into a pickle, whereas it's much easier to if students tell us in advance that they're coming, that they have this condition, and we can work with them to make those preparations so they're better prepared. And we try and avoid those issues arising. But generally speaking, I think the support is there and students have the option to access it, and I like to think that we do quite well at trying to mitigate the impacts and ensure that the students can demonstrate their knowledge and fulfil their full potential.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, wow, that was really interesting to listen to, since, like you said, a lot of people forget that many students need different kinds of support a lot of the time, and you know, I'm really glad that there's a system in place to make sure that those students are able to be supported in the best way that they can.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd say that for the University of Nottingham, at least, that'd be one of the pros of attending, that there's an effort being made to help students that need it most. I mean, it's certainly not flawless, since Eleanor mentioned that academic staff often underestimate the extent of the needs of some students, you know, especially ones that are in frequent contact with her team due to those needs, I think.
Oh, yeah, but of course, there's still difficulty, obviously, you know. Like she said, they often need to make clear to students the extent of which they can offer help, so, you know, there's the issue of some students perhaps being too over-reliant on the support team and maybe expecting much more from them than they're actually able to offer.
Yeah, definitely. But I'd say it's really reassuring to know that not only is there help available for disabled students, but also that Eleanor seemed confident that, you know, not just her, but her entire team feels like they do well at giving out that help.
So, overall then, taking into consideration what we found out, not just from Eleanor, but also from our research and Vox Pops and stuff like that, what would you say is our general consensus for whether or not it's worth attending a university in Nottingham?
I'd say that to an extent, yes, but it's heavily dependent on a lot of different factors, like if you're in a financially stable state or not, or whether you're properly interested in the course you're going on to, and whether the benefits of it will outweigh the time and the money it will cost you. So, as a whole, it's not really a question that you can answer just yes or no to. Like, conclusively, it's up to you, and it's important to take into consideration your own circumstances and what you want out of the whole experience.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. All right, well then, this was the Nottingham College podcast, and thank you so much for listening.
See you next time.